Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to figure out exactly why your hard-earned cash seems to just evaporate right in front of your eyes. Today is all about the funny physics of prices. And look, we're doing this with absolutely zero boring charts. We're skipping all that impenetrable Wall Street jargon, and we're just going to rely on a whole lot of common sense. We really want to break down how inflation actually works, why it makes us feel so poor, and what those central banks are actually doing behind the scenes to try and fix it. So let's start with that immediate, highly relatable pain we literally all feel. You know the drill. You go to the grocery store, you buy the exact same essentials you bought a couple of years ago. But when the cashier hands you that receipt, it feels like you've been robbed by invisible forces. Your salary might have stayed the same, or maybe it even bumped up a tiny bit, but the power of that money, your actual purchasing power, has seriously tanked. It's the core reason why so many of us feel like we're falling behind, even when we're working harder than ever. And it's not just the price tags going up, right? It's the incredibly sneaky ways companies hide it. There's this Reddit user, DBX999, who hit the nail perfectly on the head. They wrote, politicians will say, these Thanksgiving packs are way cheaper this year, but the new package contains 2 dust bunnies and a piece of gravel. That is a prime example of what we call shrinkflation. The undeniable reality here is that even if the price tag stays exactly the same, you are getting way less product for your money. Your cash is literally buying you less. To really wrap our heads around what's happening to our wallets, it helps to look at how different cultures describe this whole phenomenon. The Bank of Thailand actually has a brilliant analogy for this. In Thai, the word for inflation is nern fear. Nern means money, but the fascinating part is the word fur. It literally translates to the physical condition of having too much gas or wind in your stomach. You know, that bloated, super uncomfortable feeling? So, according to Thai economists, too much money floating around in the economy is exactly like having too much wind in your stomach. It causes painful economic gas for everybody. Let's break this down even further with a super simple mental model from our sources. Just imagine a tiny, isolated economy. You've got 10 people, they each have exactly $1, and a local farmer has exactly 10 apples to sell. Naturally, the market decides an apple is worth $1. Makes sense, right? But what happens if a central bank suddenly steps in and hands everyone an extra dollar? Now those 10 people have $20 total, but there are still only 10 apples. Well, the farmer isn't stupid. He realizes everyone has more cash, so the price of an apple instantly shoots up to $2. You technically have more money in your pocket, but you aren't actually any richer. That little apple story brilliantly illustrates the 3 main causes of this economic bloating. First up, you have demand pull. Think back to the start of the pandemic. Everyone suddenly wanted masks and hand sanitizer, but there just weren't enough to go around, so prices skyrocketed. Second, there's cost push. If global oil prices jump, the cost to transport literally anything jumps, and manufacturers just push that extra cost right onto you. And third, that's simply printing too much money. To put this into real-world perspective, think about a standard bowl of street noodles in Thailand. Because of these 3 factors grinding away over the last 15 years, that exact same bowl went from 20 baht to 50 baht. Same noodles, same meat, but way more than double the price. Okay, so here's a really crucial point. When people see that bowl of noodles hit 50 baht, the immediate thought is, wow, rising prices are absolutely evil. And following that logic, falling prices, which economists call deflation, well, that must be an absolute dream come true, right? Just imagine your money gaining value just by sitting doing nothing in your bank account. It sounds amazing for you and me as consumers, but we really need to look at the bigger picture here. Actually, scratch that. We need to completely smash that myth right now. Deflation is actually an absolute nightmare. Our sources literally describe it as an economic death knell. Why? Because human psychology takes over. If you know for a fact that a new phone, a car, or even a house is going to be cheaper next month, you stop spending your money today. You hoard it. And when everyone stops spending, businesses can't sell their products. When they can't sell, they can't pay their staff, which leads to mass layoffs. Then those newly unemployed folks stop spending entirely, and the whole economy just craters into a deep, dark depression. But here is the crazy twist. A little bit of inflation, it's actually the secret sauce that keeps the whole machine alive. Because money is slowly losing its value, you are heavily incentivized to buy that gadget today or invest your cash into a business rather than just stuffing it under your mattress. It also makes life a whole lot easier for borrowers. If you take out a loan right now, the money you use to pay it back years from now is actually worth a little bit less, which eases your debt burden. This constant, gentle push of inflation promotes business investment, keeps people hired, and keeps the money moving. Now, keeping that inflation at just the right level, that is the incredibly stressful job of central banks. And let's be honest, Economists absolutely love to make this sound incredibly complicated. They use massive lists of abbreviations and complex equations, like the Taylor rule, just to diagnose the economy. But listen, we don't need to be math geniuses to understand what their actual goal is. The Bank of Thailand, for instance, relies on a much simpler metric. They use a flexible target range of just 1 to 3%. Their real job is essentially just playing referee, trying to keep inflation right in this safe Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, where your savings melt away and prices just spiral completely out of control, and definitely not too cold, where the economy freezes up into deflation. Just a steady, predictable 1 to 3% so businesses and regular people can actually confidently plan for their futures. How they keep it in that zone, though, depends entirely on what is actually causing the sickness. Think of interest rates as the medicine. The U.S. Federal Reserve had to use a giant sledgehammer recently. They hiked rates incredibly fast, by 0.5 or 0.75% at a time. Why? Because the U.S. had a massive demand-side crisis. People were handed stimulus checks, so there was way too much cash chasing way too few goods. But the Bank of Thailand? They waited patiently. They realized their inflation was mostly a supply-side crisis, caused by global oil prices spiking after the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Banging the interest rate sledgehammer wasn't going to magically drill more oil. So they applied the medicine much more gently, to avoid completely crushing their own economic recovery. And man, if central banks get this wrong, the results are literally catastrophic. One of the Reddit users from our sources brought up a hilarious but honestly terrifying historical warning story. The mighty Roman emperors completely destroyed their own currency because they just didn't understand basic monetary policy. They kept minting more and more coins to pay for stuff. Hyperinflation hit incredibly hard. The money lost value so fast that it became completely worthless. The greatest empire on earth was essentially forced into an accidental barter economy, literally trading chickens for boots just to survive. Thankfully, we aren't living in the Roman Empire, but we absolutely still need to protect our wallets today. Our sources lay out a pretty clear survival guide. First off, budget like a boss. You've got to know exactly what is coming in and going out. Second, cut the dead weight. Cancel those unused subscriptions and redirect that hash. And most importantly, do not just leave all your money sitting in a standard savings account where inflation is just going to slowly eat it alive. You have to invest in assets that historically beat inflation over time. We're talking certain stocks, index funds, or physical assets like gold. Because remember, the weird physics of prices dictate that sitting perfectly still financially, that is the exact same thing as moving backward. A little bit of inflation is totally necessary for the world to function, but it is 100% up to you to make sure your personal wealth actually outpaces it. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. If you know your cash is slowly evaporating in your bank account right this very second, what asset are you moving it into today to protect your tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.